Hello and welcome back to our channel, where we dive deep into the fascinating lives of historical figures. Today, we're turning our attention to a lesser known but intriguing ruler of the Ottoman Empire, Sultan Osman III. His story is a powerful reminder of how personal experience can shape an entire reign, even one as short as his. So, let's explore the life of the Sultan who emerged from decades of confinement to briefly lead one of the world's most powerful empires. Osman III was born in 1699, the son of Sultan Mustafa II, but his path to the throne was anything but direct. In the Ottoman Empire, there was a unique and often brutal system for managing succession. To prevent civil wars between princes, potential heirs were often kept in a special part of the Topkapi Palace known as the Kafes, which literally translates to the cage. This wasn't a literal cage, but rather a luxurious gilded prison. Princes lived here in complete isolation, cut off from the outside world and political affairs, often for their entire lives. Osman spent over 40 years, some sources even say nearly 50 years, in the Kafes. Imagine that. From childhood to middle age, your entire world is confined to a few opulent rooms, your only companions being servants and concubines, with the constant fear that one day the executioner might arrive at your door. This long confinement had a profound and lasting impact on his personality. When he finally ascended the throne in 1754, at the age of 55, he was a man shaped by decades of isolation, paranoia, and a deep-seated distrust of those around him. His predecessor was his older brother Mahmud I, whose reign was marked by significant cultural flourishing and military conflicts. When Mahmud died, Osman was the next in line. The moment the palace gates opened for him wasn't just a release. It was a transition from a life of utter powerlessness to one of absolute authority. But the man who emerged was not a charismatic, ambitious leader ready to conquer the world. Instead, he was described as strict, introverted, and deeply suspicious of everyone. He had missed out on the education of a ruler, the military training, the diplomatic meetings, the administrative experience. His understanding of the world was limited to the whispers and intrigues he might have overheard within the palace walls. This psychological baggage would define his short 3-year rule. One of the most notable aspects of Osman III's reign was its remarkable peacefulness. For an empire that was almost constantly at war, this was a rare interlude. There were no major military campaigns launched, no significant territorial gains or losses. The empire's massive administrative machine, which had been running for centuries, largely continued on its own momentum. The day-to-day governance was handled by the Grand Viziers, the chief ministers of the empire. While Osman was the ultimate authority, he seemed to have little interest in grand political strategies or military expansion. His focus was much closer to home, within the walls of the palace and the streets of his capital, Istanbul. Instead of foreign policy, Osman channeled his energy into imposing a strict sense of moral order. Having spent his life in the often decadent and excessive environment of the Harem, he developed a strong aversion to luxury and what he saw as moral laxity. He was known for his attempts to enforce public modesty. One famous and perhaps apocryphal story claims that he couldn't stand the sight or sound of women. He allegedly wore iron-soled shoes so that the clanking would announce his approach, giving any women in his path time to hide. While this might be an exaggeration, it reflects his reputation as a rigid and austere ruler. He disliked music and courtly entertainment, things that had defined the reigns of many of his predecessors. He sought to strip the court of its pomp and ceremony, distancing himself from the very opulence that had imprisoned him for so long. His policies weren't just about personal preference. They had a public dimension. He issued decrees regulating clothing and public behavior, aiming to create a more disciplined society. For example, he placed restrictions on women's movements and attire in public. These measures were not popular. The court officials, who were used to a life of intrigue and luxury, found his austere nature difficult and alienating. The general public too bristled under his strict regulations. While his intentions might have been to instill a sense of order, his methods made him an unpopular figure. He was seen not as a strong, visionary leader, but as a cranky old man trying to impose his bleak worldview on everyone else. His reign was also marked by a series of great fires that devastated large parts of Istanbul. While not his fault, these disasters added to the general sense of misfortune and gloom associated with his time on the throne. Osman III's impact on the empire's long-term trajectory was minimal. He didn't build grand mosques, sponsor great artists, or lead victorious armies. His reign is often seen as a quiet, uneventful pause in the grand narrative of Ottoman history. He was a placeholder sultan, a man who occupied the throne simply because he was next in line, but his story is significant for what it reveals about the Ottoman system itself. The practice of the Kafes, intended to secure the dynasty, often produced rulers who were psychologically damaged and unprepared for the immense responsibility of leadership. Osman is the perfect case study. His personality and policies were a direct reaction to his life in confinement. His suspicion, his austerity, and his lack of political ambition can all be traced back to those long, lonely decades spent in the gilded cage. In 1757, after just 3 years as Sultan, Osman III died. Thank you so much for joining us for this look into the life of a forgotten sultan. It is these lesser-known stories that often give us the most insight into the complexities of the past. If you found this interesting, please give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into history. Let us know in the comments which historical figure you'd like to see us cover next. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.